Hey everybody, it's Steph from Destination Exploration here with another Technology Thursday post for our At Home with DE series. Today we're going to be making a game for our microbit and using the MakeCode simulator so that you can do it at home if you don't have a microbit for yourself. Let's do it! Alright, so the first thing that we have to do is jump on over to the MakeCode website, which is makecode.microbit.org. And what we're going to do is you can see all these tutorials and things that are here, but we're going to jump in and create a new project. We're going to name it Snap the Dots. So now here we go. We've got our simulator on the left, we've got our code blocks in the middle, and our workspace on the right. So today we're actually going to be working in this advanced and under the game tab to use all these blocks here, something that we haven't done before, but we're going to use some of these functions to help us with the score, the game, and some pre-recorded or pre-coded basically end screens. Okay, so the first thing that we have to do is, because the game blocks use this variable called Sprite, we have to make one of those so that we can set it to exist at the beginning. So we're gonna jump into the variables, create it, and we're gonna call it Sprite. Perfect, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set the sprite right on the start, so we're in our start block here, and then we're gonna jump into the game and we're gonna create this sprite that is essentially exists as one pixel, and we can move it across the screen so it exists as a coordinate within our LED array. Okay, so we're gonna jump in here and create a sprite at a certain coordinate. We're setting the sprite to this, and we're gonna set it right in the middle. So our microbit has a grid of 5x5 LEDs, but they do start at 0 both on the x-axis, which is the horizontal, and the y-axis, which is the vertical axis. So they both start, so 0, 0 would be the top left right up here. Okay, so we're setting the sprite and we're creating it at 2, 2, which is, you can see, jumping right up into the middle. So that's what we wanna see. Then what we're gonna do is we have to make this move. So we're gonna work over in the forever block, okay, and we are going to jump into the game tab here. We are going to look for the block that says move sprite by 1, okay, and then we're going to pause. So you can see that we've moved it over to the right there and it's kind of hit a wall, and then we're going to add a pause. So let's jump up here to the basics, pause for 100 milliseconds, so it's just a 1 second, okay, and then what we're gonna do is we have to tell it that once it hits a wall, it's going to bounce. It's gonna do that automatically, which is really nice. So we're gonna jump into the game blocks again, and we are gonna grab this one right here, which is the sprite if on an edge, bounce. So you can see now that it should bounce back and forth once it hits the wall. Pausing for a little bit there. If we change the pause, say 1 second, it's gonna make it, once it reloads, it's gonna make it a little bit easier because the sprite is moving at a really slow pace. So at 100 milliseconds, it should go pretty fast, okay? So now that it's moving back and forth, the whole point of the game is to press the button and try and stop the sprite in the very center or in a specified coordinate on our system, okay? So we're gonna go with the center, so I wanna be able to press the A button and check and see if I can stop it right at the center. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to jump down and we're gonna use one of our inputs. So on the A button, when it's pressed, we wanna use some logic, so we have to check that, is this sprite in this 2, 2 coordinate? And then it's gonna do something if it is, and it's gonna do something if it isn't. So we're gonna do an if true, and then an else button. So our conditional right up here, so our if this true, we're actually going to change it so that it is, we're checking to see if the sprite is there. So if it equals a certain position. So we're going to grab in our game tab, our sprite X value. So we can change the direction, the brightness, the blink, but we're gonna do the X value. So where this X, where the sprite is on the X-axis, which is the horizontal, we want it to see if it reaches 2. Okay, so if the sprite is in the middle, then we want to add a point to our score. So we're gonna change our score by 1. So it already has built-in scores here when we're using the game code, so we don't have to worry about that. And then if it doesn't, then what we wanna do is just say game over. So if it's not in there, it means you didn't succeed in the task, so we're just gonna jump in here and grab a game over block. So you can see that if I hit it outside of it, I'm gonna get a game over, and it's going to show these different pixels telling me that it's a game over. See if I got any score. So it scrolled through game over, and then it shows me my score, and my score should be 0. We are good to go. So now let's make it a little bit harder so that maybe 2 people can play, or if you wanna get super coordinated, you can do that as well. So let's add in another sprite that is gonna move, instead of horizontally, it's gonna move vertically. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump in here and we're gonna create this, almost do the same thing. So we're gonna do a variable, make a variable, and we're gonna call it Sprite2. And we're going to set Sprite2, the same idea that we did before. We're going to jump in here, create Sprite at 2, which means we've got another dot that should exist in the middle. Perfect. We have to do the same thing and tell it to keep moving. So in our game, move the sprite by 1, and this time we have to make sure that it says Sprite2. You can name it something different to make it a little bit easier, but I've just named it Sprite2 for here. And then we also have to make sure that it also bounces once it hits an edge. And again, changing that drop down. So right now you should see them both kind of moving at the same speed and time. So really, you just have to be really fast and coordinated and press the 2 buttons at the same time. So let's make it harder and have one moving on the X and one moving on the Y. In order to do that, we can't actually specify where the sprite is moving in this forever block, but what we can do is we can change the direction of which it's traveling. So we can grab the game and we can rotate turn the sprite by a certain degree. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna put that in our start so that it only does this once. Otherwise it would just bounce around the screen like this. So on the start, we want our Sprite2 to turn right by 90 degrees, which means it'll take it from here all the way to here. So if we do 90, we should see that our sprite number 2 is now going to be moving there we go. So just make sure it's on the bottom there, so we can see that we're moving at a separate time, but they're still actually crossing the center at that same moment in time. So we've got to offset it and change it up. So at this point, we've set our second sprite to start at the same point. If we change that starting point to a different pixel, then it will offset that movement there. So we want it to start right at the top, which means it's a Y value of 0. So we want to keep X at 2 and change Y to 0. And we will see that it pops up right up here and it moves up and down just like that. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So now we also have to make sure that this second sprite has something to exist for. So we want to make sure that our B button is pressed. And what we're going to do is we're just going to duplicate this, plop it over here, and just make sure that this has Sprite2. And we want to make sure that the X value gets changed here to the Y. So we're checking if the Y value changes, because really it's always sitting along that X. If we kept it at X, it would essentially be 2 the entire time because it's moving up and down on that 2 spot as it's traveling through the game. Okay, so now we should be able to, hopefully, if we make this a little slower to help us out. There we go. So again, super easy this way, but I get points, and then it will go into game over when I miss one of these checkpoints. So once you get to this point, if you go to game over and you want to restart the game really quickly, we're just going to press both the buttons at the same time, and it should restart the game. There we go. So in order to do this, so to give you maybe some life so that your game lasts a little bit longer, we can do a couple of things. So this time we're still going to increase our score by 1, but what we're going to do is we're going to first set the number of lives that we have. So we're going to jump up here on start, set life to 3. Okay, we'll bring these up here. So we're going to set the life to 3, and then this time, instead of saying game over, we're going to remove a life. So we're gonna remove 1 life. So that way, because we're using the game blocks, once you get down to 0 lives, it assumes that the game is over. So that gives you 3 options or 3 tries essentially to win the game or keep increasing your score. And then once you miss 3 times or how many times you set, it will go into that game over screen. So we're gonna do the same thing over here with the B button. And there we go. So now you can see that I get these X's if I press it in the wrong spot, and if I get it with 3 wrong tries, it'll jump into the game over screen. So what I'm gonna do now is, of course, we're gonna download it to our microbit so that we can play it on the go. So remember, to do that, all we have to do is make sure that it is plugged into our computer here. We're going to click download, make sure that we've named it. It's gonna download as a hex file into our downloads folder. We're going to drag that over to the microbit, watch it flash, and then when we're ready to go, we should get our game and our pixel to appear in the middle. Perfect, and they are moving, and now we are ready to play. Oh, I missed. Let's see if I can do it backwards. Very hard to do. All right, so there you go there. Let me know what your maximum score is and how you can play it around the house. Let me know if you've done any other modifications to it, and of course, if you've missed our intro or other activities for Microbit, go and check those. Those are in the video description below. And until next time, we'll see you then.